Hello everyone and welcome on into another video. Today I wanted to discuss with you dungeon gearing in Mythic Plus and why I think it can be improved and where I think it can be improved, and then giving kind of the solution to some of the issues that I have with the current gearing system. So when we look at the current system right now with Mythic Plus, how does it work? You go into anywhere from a Mythic 0 to a Mythic Plus 15 and you get item level that scales from 184 to 210 item level depending on the key level that you do. You then have Valor points that you can obtain from completing dungeons, and then using these Valor points, you can upgrade the gear all the way up to 220 item level. Great, fantastic, awesome. You then have the Weekly Vault, which is obviously a weekly vault that can contain anywhere from 1 to 3 Mythic Plus specific items, and then you'll have a choice to pick one of those items. Obviously, considering raiding and PvP gear are also included in that, but you have potentially 3 chances of getting something good that might be an upgrade for your character, right? Which is a vast improvement on the previous iteration, which was just getting a random item once a week. And then obviously the inclusion of Valor Point systems. Well, Valor Point system has been really successful in allowing people to get upgrades to their gear, even though they might not be running high-level dungeons. It then enables them to get into high-level Mythic Plus if they are finding themselves a little bit stuck, and allows them to get higher up on that item level board when it comes to, just the game in general. Now, a few issues with this system is that raiding gear is just outright better. So if you're doing plus 15 content, which is arguably the highest level of key required in Mythic Plus, and how you can get your Keystone Master achievement and the mounts and all that kind of stuff, you're doing that level of key, the plus 15s, you're only getting 210 item level gear, which is 3 item levels lower than heroic or base heroic raiding gear, right? So there's then 2 difficulties of raiding where the gear is better than Mythic Plus gear. So when you compare somebody who's fully decked out in Mythic Plus gear compared to somebody who's in full raiding gear, the raider's going to be way more powerful from a base item level perspective. You're also then going to have your final bosses, so Stone Legion General and Side Anathrius, where you can actually get 233 item level gear from raiding. And of course, within that, you get those weapons, those big juicy 233 weapons. Now, if you're doing Mythic Plus, even if you're getting a 226 item from your weekly vault, it's still not going to be as good and will never be as good as your 233 weapons from raiding. Or previously, we saw, even in, I think week 1 or week 2 of the expansion launching, we saw people being able to get 233 weapons from PvP. And you see a lot of people in the early stages of gearing in a new patch or in a new expansion, so people are going and doing their PvP and getting raiding there in order to then get gear to be used in Mythic Plus and raid and so on and so forth. So it basically comes down to Mythic Plus gearing is the weakest of the 3 pillars. And I know that Mythic Plus may not be considered as a pillar for a lot of people, but I think that it is, and I think that it should be recognized as much. A lot of people talk about it being like this mini game, but I think, we have competitions and esports surrounding Mythic Plus dungeons, and it's a core aspect of competitive gameplay that is used in World of Warcraft now. So I don't think it's a minigame, and I don't think that we should kind of disrespect it in that manner when we could just kind of improve this system and iterate on it and make it just bigger and better and stronger than it was before. Now, I know many of you could say, well, yes, but Mythic Plus is infinitely farmable. The raid is on a weekly lockout. PvP, you have to get up to a high skill level of, rating before you're able to get the really good gear. And I understand this, and I get that. I do know that Mythic Plus is infinitely farmable. Therefore, you've got to cap the gear level somewhere. Otherwise, you're going to have people who can basically get full raiding gear in a day or a couple of days when they wouldn't normally be able to do this from raiding, especially when Master Loot isn't a thing in the game at the moment. That's probably a different video. But I would argue that even with that being said, you're still only getting 210 item level. So the gear's not really good, even though it's infinitely farmable. It doesn't end up being very strong after the first week or 2. And you have situations where, and I say you have situations like I have actually been in this situation, and I'm normally in this situation where I raid, and I like to raid. I don't really PvP that much, but I like to raid. And so I'm competing in current content. I'm getting my cutting edges. And yet when I go and do Mythic Plus, because my guild isn't this like top end raiding guild where we're killing 10 out of 10 in the first couple weeks, my gear is severely lacking compared to the people who are able to get the raiding gear. So I'm going and doing Mythic Plus 8 hours plus a day, 8 to 16 hours a day, and my gear is worse than people who are barely doing Mythic Plus. So it then puts you at this disadvantage if you are only gearing via Mythic Plus, where you just can't compete with people that are raiding. If you look at somebody like Cryptex, for example, a very solid tank, plays Vengeance Demon Hunter at the moment, when he hit 3k Raider IO score in 9.0, he was like the lowest geared tank in the world. He was what, 217 item level or something like that, and he was 3k IO. Like, he was very, very low geared. And it just goes to show, because he doesn't raid, right? And it just goes to show people like that who are doing Mythic Plus all day are getting completely just, I don't know, just gooned on because they don't have access to that raid gear in order to compete in Mythic Plus. I understand you should need raid gear to be doing raiding, but if you're trying to do Mythic Plus and trying to compete and push key level, why are you then falling short by doing Mythic Plus? And Mythic Plus isn't the best way to set you up to then do higher level Mythic Plus keys. So I definitely think that if Mythic Plus wants to stand as a pillar, then it needs to be able to support itself when it comes to gearing. And you shouldn't need to go PvPing or need to go and compete at the highest level of raiding and saying, yeah, clearing heroic, clearing a few mythic bosses, sure, but you shouldn't need to be 10 out of 10 cutting edge in order to push beyond, 20 low 20 keys in Mythic Plus, if that is the main area of content that you enjoy and that you want to kind of pursue. Looking then at a solution to some of these issues, we have to keep in mind that anything that happens in one of these pillars of the game will influence the others. So you have to be careful about PvP gear impacting raiding in Mythic Plus and vice versa, and the three systems together need to make sure that they're not stepping on each other's toes, but are able to support one another to some degree, with each pillar being standalone the best way in order to compete at that level, right? So if you want a PvP, you should be doing PvP. If you want a Mythic Plus, you should be doing Mythic Plus. If you want to do well in raiding, you should have to raid. Right? You shouldn't have to do well in PvP in order to raid and vice versa. They should support one another, but not be just outright the best way to do these things. So, looking then at my solution would be to add in dungeon gear sets to the game. Things like giving benefits to you for equipping multiple pieces of gear that drop specifically in dungeons, where these bonuses are only impacting you within dungeon content. And it could even extend into things like Torghast and the Moor or something like that, where it's like solo-y content / dungeons. That would be cool, right? And yeah, it wouldn't affect you in raiding, it wouldn't affect you in PvP. It would just emphasize these benefits in dungeons. And we've seen that this already works in game currently when you look at PvP gear, where some of these trinkets, it's like if you're equipping 2 PvP trinkets at once, then you gain additional versatility from all of your gear or whatever, right? Which means that you're using these in PvP scenarios, and it says, hey, I've actually taken my PvP seriously. I've actually invested in PvP gear, so I'm getting the benefit of this to work in PvP. So if we were to do this for dungeons, then it would be a similar thing, and it could be like a 6-piece set or like a 2-set, 4-set, 6-set, 8-set bonus or something like that, right? And I mean, they can mess with it, but there could be all kinds of benefits to it, right? It could be stat increases, it could be ability changes, right? So say, because from Blizzard's standpoint, right, they might say, oh, well, we'd love to invest in a spec being better at Mythic Plus, but we can't because then it will affect it in raid or PvP, and we can't do that because we like where it's at with raiding, we like where it's at with PvP, and Mythic Plus is just for fun, right? Whereas if you could then have these dungeon sets that are able to buff certain abilities or spell interactions or something within certain dungeons, then that way you could buff these specs that are potentially underperforming via these dungeon sets that will only influence them in that scenario. when I think of things, so for an example, with Feral Druid, right? Feral Druid suffers from AoE. So you could have like a dungeon set where it makes swipe being uncapped, or something like increase the damage of your Primal Wrath, or increase your bleed damage from all sources or whatever by 1,000,000%. Who cares? Just lock it in, right? Whatever it may be, like increase damage of your rake when applied to multiple targets or something like that, right? You could have these various increases in potency of certain abilities just locked into those dungeons. Then as soon as you go into raid, it hasn't impacted things there. The reason why I think this would be a good solution is because I think Blizzard are very remiss to buff things or nerf things in one area of the game because it's going to impact elsewhere in the game. And I don't know if they have the capability to say buff an ability when it's just used in one area of the game. So if you were going to buff, say, like, I don't know, damage of your Pyroblast or some shit for mages, and you just wanted to do it in raid but not in Mythic Plus, could you do that? I don't know. I don't know if they have the technology like capable of doing that. I don't know. I'm not a coder. I don't code things. So I wouldn't know, but I feel like Blizzard don't really do that kind of stuff. They don't do, oh, hey, we're going to buff it in this area and not in this area unless it comes to PvP. So if they're able to do it in PvP, maybe they could do it. They could do it baseline, in which case you wouldn't necessarily need this gearing system. But I do definitely think that by having this gearing system in place, this dungeon tier set, then you could have a lot of fun, you know, really editing your characters in this way and editing your class and your spec in this way with this dungeon gear in a way that only affects dungeons and could easily nerf and buff classes if they get out of control or are underperforming in certain areas within Mythic Plus. And it just makes such a malleable way for Blizzard to really, I don't know, get to grips with Mythic Plus gearing and just emphasize it and make it the standalone, like, best way to gear if you want to push Mythic Plus. Because from my standpoint, if I'm pushing Mythic Plus all day, I want to be one of the best, or like best people possible for doing that. I don't want a raider to come in with full Mythic raiding gear and then just be able to hard shit on me just because they've got some more gear than I do from the raid. Now, I also wanted to discuss another idea, which is just in a kind of general gearing system in terms of World of Warcraft, which is just taking a look at the Burning Crusade and how infinitely just better their gearing system is in general, just for all areas of the game, right? Where each individual piece, each individual item is just so unique from anything else that you will find. There are certain items in the game where you can only get them like once or twice from various areas on that item. So for example, if you're a rogue, you need that expertise sword from Black Morass. So you have to go there to get that sword because it's like your best in slot for like multiple tiers of Burning Crusade. And there are just so many items where, oh, this one has expertise on, this one has crit chance, this one has like hit chance, this one has agility and stand, this one doesn't have agility this time, but it's got some other stuff on it. Like, there's just so many different variations of gear. Everything is so unique. And then you also, on top of that, have various trinkets and just items in general that do some pretty unique things. Like, I'm using a trinket on my Druid where it reduces the shapeshifting cost of my abilities by 550. So I can basically be shapeshifting for free for like 20 seconds, which is really, really cool. And it's just like these really unique gearing pieces, and it makes the gearing system really fun and interesting. Right now, when it comes to the gearing system in World of Warcraft, I feel like they've made it so basic and stripped it, and yet you still need to go and run simulations anyway to figure out what piece is better for you. So if you have to run sims anyway, hey, you may as well make the gear actually interesting and unique and make people want to go and farm certain areas of the game for certain pieces. Might just see some improvement there. Who knows? But I do think that this gearing system would be, I'd like to say, easily implementable. I don't see it being too difficult, really, because you can edit it pretty freely and it wouldn't be that impactful because it's tied only to dungeons. But it could also just be something that really helps fix up a lot of classes. And then also, it just makes people that are pushing Mythic Plus feel a lot stronger by pushing Mythic Plus. I think when you weigh up all of these aspects, I think this could be a really, really good system for new dungeon gearing in Mythic Plus. And I would love to see Blizzard just work with this idea, just run with this, or even just an idea of their own, just to make it like more balanced, more interesting when you're a die-hard Mythic Plus player. Because if you raid and you do PvP, then Mythic Plus is just kind of where you go to, I don't know, hang out with your friends or just push Smile willy-nilly. But for the people that play it all day, I think that we could definitely see some improvement. But that's kind of just my take. I think that gearing in general could be improved when we compare things to Burning Crusade and how just interesting the gearing system is there. And then we look at current WoW and we go, oh, this one has Verse Mastery, this one has Crit Mastery, this one has Verse Haste. Like, everything's a carbon copy of everything else. Like, give me something new, give me something interesting. And then, yeah, let me see this new dungeon gearing system where then you can upgrade it with Valor points, and you can upgrade your tier set with Valor points and continue that on and just build on your item level and your power there. And I don't know, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Don't forget as well to check out our sponsor, Eco Vape. They're down in the description below, and you can check out their products. You can use code SCI50 at the checkout to get 50% off any of their vape products on the list there from their roleplay vape range. Of course, I'm not encouraging people to start vaping if they don't already, but if you're smoking and you're trying to quit, or if you currently already vape, then check them out. If not, all good, but they're down below in the description for you. Let me know what you think in the comment section. See you in the next one.